Hello and welcome to my presentation of a systematic approach to tree identification in the field, aimed mainly at beginners to tree identification. Before I actually go into the system itself, which we have in the presentation here, I'd like to just raise some of the equipment you could bring with you in the field. Probably the most important piece of equipment is a tree identification book. You would like preferably to be quite small, yet with as much detail as possible. I personally find Collins' Complete British Trees the one that I use, and in the English environment this is ideal. Also, you may wish to purchase a measuring tape. You can use this to measure the thickness of a trunk. This aids in helping age the tree, which, if you're interested in veteran trees, is very important. One final piece of equipment you may wish to purchase would be a magnifying glass. This can aid a detailed analysis of any parts of the tree, but most likely the foliage of the tree. Okay, now I'm going to present the identification procedure that I've developed under the acronym STARF. This begins with S, which is the season, situation, soil, and there's a subgroup species which I'll come to later. This is basically the wider environment of the tree, which we come to will aid us in identification. Following that, we move on to the trunk. This should be the part of the tree which you should be able to gain access to, which you can touch and feel. This is very important in window identification and also in giving us a rough estimate of the age of the tree. In window identification, we use A, which is arrangement. This is the arrangement of the buds on the stems. In the winter months, obviously we don't have any of the foliage, the flowers or the fruit available to us for identification. So therefore we have to resort to the bud arrangements. This is quite a difficult procedure of identification, but can be used. However, primarily we will be using the foliage, flowers and fruit for our identification. Now, foliage are the leaves of the tree, and these may be used as our primary identification feature because each individual tree will have an individual leaf. But moving on from there, we'll also aid our identification in the spring months with the flowers of a tree, and in the late summer to autumn months we'll be using the fruits, which is particularly important on fruit trees, like an apple, for instance. Now, the main approach that we're using to identification with this system is working from the outside, the outer environment, through to the soil environment, into the trunk, and then to the outer arrangement of the crown, depending on season what is available to us for identification. Within that, I hope this guides you to not only having a systematic approach to tree identification, but also allows you to give more attention to the environment of the tree and the small details which allow you to appreciate a tree for what it is. Okay, now we'll have a closer view of each of the individual elements of the STARF system, beginning with S, which is season, situation, soil, but more appropriately the wider environment. Beginning with season. Season will be a good indication as to the identification features you are likely to find at that time of year. Obviously in the winter you'll have to use the relevant winter identification features. In spring you may use flowers as an addition, and in autumn the fruits. Following season we have situation. This is the wider environment in which you will find the tree. The main distinctions that I have drawn here are a rural environment, potentially even a woodland or forest, and an urban environment. These will affect the species you are likely to find. There are other environments also, those near rivers. This again will affect the species that are likely to be available. Now, the final element that we use, being soil in this identification, is more in regard to the health of the tree. The soil environment is key to a healthy tree and is often forgotten in the urban environments. This is why I have drawn a road over the soil root plate there. Not so important for identification, but if you are interested in the health of the tree and how the environment is affecting that health of the tree, consider this as an important feature within that. Next, I think I'll move on to species. Okay, now we go on to the identification of the trees themselves. There are two main species of tree. These you'll be familiar with as the conifers and the broadleaves. The technical terms that we use for those are the gymnosperms and the angiosperms. Not really so important for the beginner to know this, but basically the broadleaves evolved from the conifers and they are more adapted to tropical environments as well as temperate environments, whereas the conifers are still well adapted to more Arctic environments. So depending on where you are in the world, you'll be mainly dealing with broadleaves or conifers. We are in a temperate zone in England and we primarily deal with broadleaves. A small element there, gymnosperm means naked seed, whereas angiosperm refers to seeds like nuts and fruits which are covered. Now we move on to T, which is the trunk of a tree. Now the use of the bark structure as an identification feature tends to be quite a specialised discipline, yet we can break it down into some key features and then refer to more detailed information later. The key elements of the bark that I have are peeling, flaking, rough and smooth. Most trees fall into the rough category, but trees such as a birch fall into peeling. You'll notice this as it grows the bark peels off, whereas with a rough tree it expands and breaks apart and retains that bark. Flaking, most commonly seen in a London plain in urban environments, is self-explanatory. It just, as it expands, it flakes off. And smooth bark, again, is obviously smooth and is most common in the beech tree. It tends to be a rather thin bark, and it doesn't retain its bark for as long, and that is why it is smooth. The other element of the trunk we use is measuring the size of the trunk to give an approximate age of a tree. Now, oak trees, for instance, can live up to 1,000 years, and these would be 5 or more metres in girth, whereas trees such as a birch may only live for 70 years and may only grow as large as a metre in girth. So you can't accurately judge the age of a tree purely by its girth. However, each individual species will give us some indication, and naturally, the larger, the older. The other main identification feature we use in the winter months, other than the bark of the trunk, is the arrangement of the buds on the stem. Now we can also use this at other times of the year to confirm identification. There are 3 main styles of arrangement on a stem. These are alternate, where the buds lie alternately on the stem. One, then you move along, then the other. Opposite, where 2 buds will lie opposite each other on the stem. And other. Now most of the structures fall into the alternate group, so if you have one that is different, this can aid identification, but there are quite a few varieties here. Now we come to F, foliage, flowers and fruits. Foliage, the leaves of the tree, are the main identification feature we use. The flowers and the fruits are there for additional information and to confirm our identification. When it comes to foliage, there is an almost infinite variety of leaf shapes, yet using a process of elimination we can get them into subgroups and therefore send us in the right direction towards our positive identification. These main subgroups are shown here. We begin with simple entire. A simple leaf is the leaf that you'll probably be most familiar with. It's here. This is a traditional leaf shape without any edges to the margins of the leaf. They are smooth. They are closely followed by the largest group, a subgroup of leaves that we have, which is the simple toothed. Again, it's a very simple leaf shape, yet the edges are the main distinguishing feature that we use. They will be serrated or toothed. The third group are the lobed or palmate leaves. There are two distinctions here. Lobed are the edges of the leaf are lobed and a distinctive shape of lobes, whereas a palmate leaf develops from the centre to the outer edges, generally in 5 points, like a palm of a hand. So we can distinguish between the lobed, which is more similar to the simple leaves, and the palmate leaf. Fourth is a compound leaf. This is composed of single leaflets, often confused as individual leaves themselves. You'll be able to distinguish that it is a single leaf because it will be attached to the stem at one bud and then develop leaf shapes along a main stalk. Finally, we have the needle-shaped leaves. These are almost exclusively held by the coniferous family of trees and fall into two main groups of needle-like structures in the pines and the spruces and so on, and scale-like structures in the spruces and so on. So there you go, these are the main 5 groups that we use, and out of those 5 groups you have to go into an even more detailed identification for your final analysis. When it comes to the flowers of a tree, there are 2 distinct groups. Those are flowers with petals and catkins. The distinctions between these flowers are caused by their pollinators. Catkins are wind pollinated, whereas flowers are pollinated by insects and therefore require petals to attract them. There are a vast array of shapes and sizes when it comes to flowers, therefore we only break them into 2 distinct groups: insect pollinated and wind pollinated. The insect pollinated will be colourful, the wind pollinated generally tend to be green or brown. The final supplement we use for positive identification is that of the fruits. This would traditionally be found in late summer to autumn, and we begin with the main subgroup of cones, which are almost exclusively found on conifers. These cones themselves contain the seeds of the tree, and there will be many of them. Secondly, we have the winged fruits. These tend to be on trees which are wind pollinated, and the structures of the seed-bearing capsules tend to utilise the wind for their dispersal. The next 3 we have are the berries, nuts and succulents. They tend to advertise themselves to animals for their dispersal. Initially we have berries, which tend to be quite small and primarily used by birds for dispersal. Next we have the nuts, for instance the acorn or the beech nuts, which will often fall to the ground, so you will find them on the forest floor. Tend to be rather large seeds and therefore produce a large tree. And finally we have the succulents. These are the fruits you'll be probably most commonly used to, which are apples and the stone fruits, which provide their seed with a succulent outer casing to advertise themselves to animals for their dispersal. So now we return to the original scene of the staff system of identification. You'll probably have gathered already that this will not give you a detailed positive identification of a single species of tree. It must be seen that this is just a system to give you an overview of how to identify trees. Then you will have to refer to other resources for a more detailed information for a precise identification. But using this process, as I say, working from the outer environment up through the trunk and into the foliage and flowers of a tree and so on, I'm hoping that you will have gained an understanding of how a tree relates to its environment and of how you may then find the detailed features required for positive identification. I will be producing a series of identification videos for each individual species, starting with the native species of the English countryside. They will be tagged using the YouTube system with the various acronyms and words that I've used in this presentation today. So if you find a part of your identification, a positive part of the identification, you can put that in a tag, and hopefully that will lead you to the video which will be the final identification of the tree in question. In conclusion, well, I hope you've enjoyed the presentation, and even more, I hope that you will see more of the identification videos in the future as we take it out into the field and the Essex landscape around me. I will be showing you how this system is used out in the environment, in the field, so to speak. But otherwise, I hope that this has stimulated some of your own interest in trees and nature, and hopefully you will share them with me and share the love of trees, which I have. Thank you very much.